but that's on me. That's on me.
Ready?
Yeah, about ready. All right. Pretty sure I copied everything over from one to the other when I did this.
We will find out.
Yeah, we're gonna realize this.
Hey, if nothing else, it's a surprise for us.
We'll
It's
just
a
go
surprise
back
for
to
them.
the other one. We're just gonna start over with this one.
That's why it's okay for me to wrap my own Christmas gifts, because I don't remember what's in there.
This is
I don't
fine.
Yeah, no, I'm with him. You know, it's just a
Take a walk to the door.
so it's easy. I can
Find out.
help buddy too. Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? You coming back? Oh, we'd love to have you.
Just when he needs.
Anybody else?
When he needs a break.
Catch anybody? All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming. We are a more intimate group, and so hopefully we can capitalize on that by getting to your questions. In fact, when we put together this section, we wanted to have things to talk about, absolutely, but we also wanted to make sure that if there was anything we could answer for you, even more so than our first question, anything to do with cybersecurity, faculty staff training, anything that we come up against, or things that we talked about previously, we'll try to bring up again. We want to be a Q&A for you with an industry leader and a Christian school professional, if we can be. So let's get introduced and walk through that a little bit, but here we go. This is Cybersecurity Strategy on a Shoestring. I'm Mark Zockoll, and this is James Rabe. We are going to take a minute now and introduce ourselves. James is going to go first.
Yeah, my name is James Rabe. I've been working in cybersecurity and technology for about 10 years now. This was not the career, apologies if you did it before, this was not the career I picked for myself, right? I think a lot of times IT people are coming from someplace else, and then one day you fixed a computer, like the printer jam, and then you just became the IT guy, right? That's how quickly it happens. I studied biology and chemistry and had the privilege to do my master's degree, and they paid for my master's degree to work as a GA, which was an awesome opportunity to enjoy new married life and then be able to work in the lab. So I got to teach physics and chemistry while working on a master's degree in business, an excellent opportunity. And then I went directly into technology consulting, where my role was to work with, the 40 different clients across 10 different industries. So I got to go, a mile deep in 10 different industries all at the same time. And what a wonderful, really first career consulting right out of grad school. And then now, I work in a very specialized area of cybersecurity called threat modeling, where if you're building something, I'm going to help you assess threats against that, whether it's critical infrastructure, whether it's planes, whether it's medical devices. I work in a ton of different industries to help companies translate their threat modeling processes into secure application development. So,
did you mention Pensacola?
I went to Pensacola.
There we go.
Sorry, that's mine.
We are asked, of course. I am Mark Zockoll. I'm a Christian education professional. I say that for this reason. I have been a product of Christian school since third grade, graduated from Faith Baptist School in Maryland, the school I'm here with today as a part of. I am not the administrator of the school, though I was. After my undergraduate at BJ 2 years, Maranatha 2 years, and graduated from Maranatha with an English degree, I went on for a graduate degree in English and then a doctorate in educational leadership. I brought that back to bear as the administrator of Faith Baptist School for 5 years. I teach online at Maranatha Baptist University in their research design course and other graduate education courses. And I was previously the head of school at Keystone Christian Academy in Ocean City, Maryland. So I bring to bear those experiences here amongst you, my brothers and sisters, absolutely. But my better half is Andrea, and these are my 3 kids. There's a 4th kid there, Finn. Finn is actually due on Thursday next week. So next Thursday I will be, yes, we are excited. We'll have 4 and under. So that's exciting. But the love story here did start in high school at Faith Baptist School. And in fact, our wives, Andrea and Allison, were in class together. Andrea is a nurse practitioner. Allie is a physician's assistant. Andrea went to Maranatha. Allie went to PCC, met this hunk. And these two, this is James's daughter and my daughter, Allie. They are in kindergarten together at Faith Baptist School. So we were asked to talk about how Christian education has influenced us and in the celebration of KCEA and faith relationship with KCEA over the years, attending conferences and whatnot. We would say we are thankful for it and continue to be thankful for it as the next generation comes about. We are celebrating KCEA's 50th anniversary and the conference theme of To All Generations. We want to make sure that what we are setting up, what you are setting up, what you are continually setting up is going to be there for the next generation and the next and the next. And we would not want cybersecurity issues or threats or attempts or attacks to harm you or your schools in that process. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pray, and we're going to get into the meat of the discussion today, if that's okay with you. Father in heaven, you are so good to us. I thank you for these brothers and sisters. I thank you for what they do. We're thankful for time away from the ministry, the time away to come together and to grow in you and to grow in what you provided us with. Might we do so faithfully today. And even if what we're doing today is just getting away and being with our peers that we otherwise wouldn't get a chance to, what a blessing in and of itself. Lord, you are good. We thank you for Christ, our Savior, in whom we have communion, even in this room and across our ministries. Amen. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be that cybersecurity on a shoestring. We're going to have I'll be your guide, and James will absolutely come in and be your guide at times too. And we'll go back and forth as ideas come to us or as notes that we've prepared come to us. We want to make note of you too. We spent our last session talking about faculty staff training. We are cognizant, because of a survey which we will introduce you to, that there is an immense need for faculty and staff training when it comes to cybersecurity in our Christian schools. We'll evidence that in a little bit. We're not going to go down that route quite so much in this workshop. In this workshop, we really want to offer up James's brain and any expertise we can, absolutely, to your cybersecurity needs, or your just IT needs or questions or whatnot, as best as we can. So we have them in the room, let's use them. But besides that, we do want to present what we're walking away saying, okay, when we look at a school organizationally, where do we see common problems amongst our Christian schools based on what we did, and the research will show you? What are we seeing as a probable obstacle that they need to consider overcome? And what's the solution for that? Hopefully we'll be able to present you with some tools. All of this being with the Christian school budget on our minds, because not all of us are Carol Christian, and not all of us are Carol, and we all don't have billions to work with. So,
Called out.
Yeah, it's okay. Somebody called me out earlier, so I'm just passing along. It's fine. Anyway, so this is what we're going over. We'll have our introduction to the survey we conducted this year, James and I, the cybersecurity considerations that can come from that, and then some suggestions we're going to make. Up in this corner, you're going to see the logo for the Christian Principles Podcast. That's the sticker around you as well. The administrator of Faith Baptist School, Matthew George, and I co-host the Christian Principles Podcast. So anybody that would like to, please take that. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on different Android platforms now that I wasn't even aware of. But it's by Christian schools, by Christian school principals, for Christian school principals, because we did not see a podcast out there like that. We take very small bites of big pies and then start a conversation. We're trying to grow that community. So you're going to hear from so what I bring to the table today is some of the things we've talked about in that podcast. And actually James and his organization, PhishSBY, was a part of that podcast recently. And it's through that collaboration and the survey conducted and the knowledge gained that we're presenting to you today. So that's why we're going to have that information there for you as well. Speaking of that survey, or a greater, if we're writing an article, we're going to talk about literature review first. So maybe you ask me, why is it that you're talking about cybersecurity? We would say we're talking to cybersecurity to you today because the attacks against educational facilities have only grown exponentially, especially since COVID, but even before. But not just across all industries. I'm talking about education very specifically. MSISoft noted this year that, as it says here, more than doubled over the 2 years, rising from 45 in 2022 to 108 in 2023. And notice this, of the 108 affected districts, that's not schools, that's districts, that comes in on about 1,900 schools, nearly 200,000 stolen files being posted online, which include details of campus rape, teacher abuse cases, student psychological reports, and other extremely sensitive information. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but I know that the schools I represented and the ones I've talked to even today and the ones I get to talk with and even mess with as far as Carol being money bags over there, but we know, it's not. The districts, the public school districts surrounding me, they're going to pour way more money into this than I'll ever be able to, or we were ever able to. These are their numbers. So if they're pouring this much money into it and they're receiving those kinds of attacks on my much more limited budget, maybe I should be even more aware. But past that, we have a few other notes to make to you about why we would say that Christian schools really need to come into contact with this information more as well. This is some more of that ground-setting information in some bite-sized chunks. So Morning Consult, which is IBM's education ransom study, specifically on education, specifically in the US. More than half of the educators don't know or have not received basic cybersecurity training. We're going to pull up some of the polls that we ran here through HUVA at the conference that basically affirm the same in a little bit. Or this one, half of educators and administrators aren't concerned about an attack against their own institutions. Again, something that we actually ran specifically for this workshop and came into contact with. I've talked a ton, and I'm sorry about that already. But James, is there anything you want to throw in here from that first couple of slides set?
Yeah, and I think from looking at this, right, half of educators and administrators aren't concerned about it. Is that because they're unaware? Is that because we feel like we've shored up that area of our infrastructure? Like why? Why is this just not a concern at all? Is there some thought that, I mean, granted, I understand we have God's hand of protection. There are fingers for the cyber attacks to get through, right? And at what point are we praying our way through cybersecurity as opposed to doing basic due diligence here to make sure we have some protections in place? We are not immune to these things just because we work in a Christian education. Now, the good side and downside is we're also sometimes not a target. We don't have money to give. If they're asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, anyone writing that check? Doesn't mean you're not going to be the victim of automated attacks, though. Okay, the automated attacks are going to be indiscriminate. The more targeted attacks, maybe they're not what you're looking for. You're not a healthcare system. That doesn't mean you're not opening something and they're not transferring $80,000 out of your bank checking account because churches still have cash, right? We still have information. So things to be cognizant of.
And I'm sure your pastor said something along the lines that my pastor has said. God is not going to, in his miraculous interventions, step in for what man in his own common sense or man through his own laziness isn't going to take or isn't going to make a part of what would be his structure of an organization or his defense of the organization or whatnot. So again, these are our secular peers, but what about us? So James and I were able to put together a survey in an academic way and send it out. We had 98 responses from 21 different states, over 10 core questions to this survey, and here it is over on the side. Again, this went out to Google Forms. The methodology was safe enough to present to you today, so to speak. What we gained from it, we would believe it's safe enough to present to you today. And here are some of the highlights we pulled out of that. Almost 80%. I have never received cybersecurity training. These are your Christian school peers. The numbers from that survey came back again largely from educators and administrators who make up the organizations that are represented here today. Even so, 80%. I've never received cybersecurity training. Okay, interesting. Let's see what else we got. Almost 70%. Never changed my password. Never change my primary password. Now, we could even excuse that if multi-factor authorization is in place, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, perhaps. But okay. I'm not aware of student data policies or any more clarity on them. Again, this is close to 64%. Now, when we're asking this question, we're specifically referring to if there's an incident on campus, if there is a phishing attack which occurs, if there's a cybersecurity event, what are the protocols? Or, as well in this question, was also the understanding that the student resources that I have available to me, what am I supposed to be doing? What can I do with them in case of an event? Or what should I or should I not have contact with? Just some troublesome numbers. Yes, I have resources to help recognize phishing attempts. So this is just, have you personally, professionally, ever come across phishing attempt resources that would help guard against such? 22%, which means, and in addition to that, 48%, they hadn't received any kind of resources. So half the people surveyed said, I don't even know where to turn. I don't have resources for a phishing attempt. I should stop here and ask, does anybody want to help define phishing for us? And not to put you on the spot, we'll put James on the spot. You want to talk about what phishing is? Oh, Josh wants to do it. Go for it.
Is that when you get like an email that looks like it's from somebody in your organization, but then when you actually look at the email address, it's nowhere close to anyone in your organization?
Yeah, bingo.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a non-technical means of just tricking someone, right? And that email could be, like you mentioned, could be an email. It could also be a text message, right? It could be a voicemail. You know, all just basic phishing, vishing, smishing, all the kinds of different words, right? Ishing on the end being a key part.
Yeah, all the ishings.
All the ishings.
All the ishings. So in summary, and it's hard to read this red on this, we had to turn the brightness up a ton, but again, close to 80%, they've not received formal cybersecurity training. I'd really want to park here and even say, if we have access to the recording of the workshop we just made, please go take a moment and look at that. And if you have questions about that, I'd love to pull up the other PowerPoint and show that, or pull up the other Canvas presentation and show that to you too, because that one has so much, there's so much value in it, because we need to be offering our faculty and staff something. Now, maybe all of you in here, though, or there are outliers. I'll pull up the survey results from Whova right here. Maybe you are some of these 2 schools, and these numbers have changed, by the way. 2 very confident in their cybersecurity as an organization. Look at that, 2 of the respondents. 15 were confident, okay. 18 not confident but at ease, 3 not confident and not at ease. I don't know where you happen to be. I can put numbers on this. I want to pull up the other one that we made, and again, this one was more focused on faculty and staff training, but it evidences even more so what we're talking about here. So, does your faculty and staff receive regular cybersecurity training? Of 51 respondents to the this is from Whova, this is from today's body of people from KCEA, 3 said yes, 37 said no, 11 said ish. I think of ish as one time we had this one guy show up and he talked about email passwords that one time, and that's okay, that's my ish. We've done it once.
And remember, if we don't train staff, how does staff train students? Right, because we teach kids, and the example that I use, and I've got a nice little series of pictures in my presentation, we teach them about the dog at the street, right? How do you pet a dog? You reach out, let him smell your hand maybe, and then I have a lot of questions. We teach them how to interact with the dog. We teach them stranger danger. We teach them don't eat candy from strangers. We teach them about white panel vans, right? And yet we don't teach them about the 40-year-old man pretending to be a 9-year-old girl in a chat room on Xbox. Because maybe as parents, we're even unaware that exists. Be nosy. Kids don't need privacy. Kids need protection. They need mom and dad, right? But how do you teach kids that if the parents don't know and the faculty and staff don't know? Be suspicious. Be paranoid.
And one of those numbers that when I created this but at ease, there is on the previous presentation, we talked about not sharing account usernames and passwords. Think of what you might share with your family in Netflix or Disney Plus because it's too expensive or whatever else. We're talking about that kind of shared information there. And the data point said that 79% of Americans do that password sharing. 13% are scared of identity theft. I kind of feel like that's sort of this answer. Not confident in our cybersecurity, but at ease. I think that's what I'm feeling on this one. Is that really where we want to be? We want to be in this place of, not me, somebody else. So for what it's worth, that was today's poll from this particular cybersecurity discussion. But what we're going to talk about now would be some cost-conscious cybersecurity considerations that we would hope you take away, and we would hope you would bring back to your school for those of you who happen to be administrators, for those of you who happen to influence these kind of policies in any way, shape, or form. We're going to now set up for you some thoughts, set up the problem, set up the solution for you. Before we get there, hopefully we've prepared the path and evidence why we think it's a big deal to have these discussions amongst the administrators and those IT professionals or the teachers who are going to be the ones coming in and carrying this torch for your school. Before we get into this, is there anything I can review for you or conversation to have over those surveys or over anybody just in disbelief, like, nah, this isn't actually that big of a problem, or perhaps you want to get into something really specific for your school? Anything we can ask for? Because we don't want to get up here and drone on and on if you do have questions that we could talk about, especially with our more intimate group, because sometimes we're going to learn more from one another's answers than even what's being presented. Anybody? We're happy to do that. Or as you hear, if you want to stop us, feel free to throw a hand up or just stop us. Neither one of us are that important in what we're saying. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll go to school awareness first off. And I do apologize that some of these slides coming up may have some smaller wording. Wasn't quite sure what the setup would be, but we'll work through it together. You want to talk about this one, James?
Yeah, so what does readiness look like from a school? Go ahead and flip to the next one here. So Know Before publishes, and Know Before is one of the products that we recommend, okay? If you're teaching students, this is not going to be unfamiliar to you, but when you see what we're, highlight the different, so we have different levels here, right? So level 1, basic compliance, level 2, security awareness foundation, programmatic security awareness and behavior, security management behavior, sustainable security culture. The goal is that over time, I move staff from a position of, we don't know anything, to we know a little bit, we know a little bit more, and then basically I have this process where I have, unawareness, right? And I also have the cost to remediate security events, because as my level of awareness goes up, the lower the security concerns are going to be in my organization. And then as my awareness goes up, I see over time that cost starts to flip-flop, because security awareness training is by far the most cost-effective preventative, detective control we can place in our organization. Humans are sometimes the biggest risk and also sometimes the biggest solution factor. Because if I can train everyone in your organization to understand what phishing emails are, what social engineering looks like, that goes so far in preventing people from, emailing out student data, leaving it on their desktop and then tossing it in the trash, right? And I mean, you guys smile, you guys joke, this happens all the time. So moving from that position of not knowing what my risks are to being even aware, like, okay, you are a risky user. If you're an administrator in school and you have more access than everyone else, you are a target. But also recognize, like, when you put your information on the website, because I worked hard for that administrator position, put my name on the website so people know I'm the administrator. You're also now a target. I have your email, I have your phone number, I know what you do. I could probably figure out your email address from the website. It's called whaling. It's like fishing, but I'm looking for the big guy. I'm looking for the whale in the room, the big high-value target. Okay, spear fishing. Like, all these things are finding that one person. By putting yourself on the website, you make yourself a target. Well, should I not do that? Maybe, but just be aware of the risk you pose when you have access to PII for students, personally identifiable information. I have social security numbers. I have healthcare records. I have financial data. The more you know, the more you have access to, the bigger a risk you are to the organization. And your level of preparedness should match your level of risk. I'm not asking for you to go out there and spend $10,000 training your K-3 teacher. Okay, she knows where the best deals on Play-Doh are. Okay, she may not have access to the financial data of everyone in your church. But your church secretary, man, there's a lot of data. And sometimes she's not the most prepared individual. Okay, match those things, do things together.
So the big call here in consideration number 1 is for school awareness. Again, we're going to present the problem here. We're going to come up with a solution too. Before we get there, I really want to ask, James has a great story that he tells in one of his, his organization, PhishSBY, P-H-I-S-H, PhishSBY. One of the things that he has talked about is a time when he was working with the church, actually in Pennsylvania, and he had a chance to cancel an event. Can you tell us that story? And that kind of awareness will give a further demonstration of the sort of awareness that we might not even think of, but we should probably have.
Yeah, so a lot of times if I'm going to an event and I'm going to have a cybersecurity training seminar, right? I always like to come into it a little bit creepy, right? But I'll get on social media and I'll look at what your church is doing. You have an event coming up? Cool. I wonder if I can take a credit card from you, right? So Number one, you can, so this is a specific example. They had I think it was like a seniors event coming up that next weekend at a local restaurant. You can call the restaurant and you can just cancel the event. No authentication necessary. I know who the church secretary is. It's on the website. Hey, so-and-so asked me to call. She said she had a reservation. Let's go ahead and cancel. Okay? That's very easy to do. And that's just fun. Right? You just mess with people. The more malicious one.
He's not actually saying it's fun.
I
He's
didn't
saying
actually do this. But I can call the secretary and say, hey, listen, I know we had an invite. My boss is all upset with me. And you just break out that nice childish voice that, to get her to kind of work with you and identify with you. You create that sense of urgency. Like, listen, my boss is bearing down on me. I need to have a credit card to hold your reservation. Is there any way you can give me a credit card? I'm not going to charge it today. I won't be charged anything until you guys get here. I just need something to hold the reservation because we've gotten burned. Okay? You start to sound a little bit like her grandkids. She's going to give you that credit card. She's going to give you that CCV on the back. She's going to give you the expiration date. And you and I just went shopping. And how hard is that a scenario to imagine? Right? That's very easy because she hears a young person who needs help, and all I got to do is help them. And I also don't want my event to be canceled. Right? You're creating a scenario that doesn't exist. And it's all just social engineering. I am just interacting with her, creating a little bit of urgency, and then she's giving me the credit card. Right? And another example is the gas station we did penetration testing for, right? Mm-hmm. The level of preparation to extract information. So I'll call on a Friday, and I'll make sure I call at a busy time, and I'll do this. Hey, so-and-so, I came through this morning, and there was this really sweet girl. She just did a really good job, and I wanted to make sure I was able to commend her service. So can I speak to the manager? And they'll put there the manager, and so let's say it's Laura, okay? Hey, Laura, I really appreciate it. I came through yesterday, and there was this young girl at the counter. She always works on Fridays. And I can't remember her name. Do you remember her name, little girl, dark hair? Oh, that's Amy. Oh, yeah, Amy did such a great job. I just want to call and let you know, okay? Now, that's a cool conversation, but now I know the manager. I know the manager's Laura. I also know the girl working on Fridays is Amy, okay? So next week when I call back and I go, hey, can I speak to Amy? I know Amy's there. Hey, Laura told me to let you know that we were going to be doing some IT systems management this morning, and there's a computer in the back room. Do you mind popping back there? I need you to go to a URL for me so I can make sure the store is going to be up and running. And if not, there's a chance we're going to have a ton of downtime. People can't do credit cards, no gas, and you might have to take off early. No one's going to get paid, okay? What she heard is I'm going to have a bunch of stressed customers who are mad because they can't swipe their credit cards, can't buy beer for the weekend, right? I'm creating some urgency in that conversation. I've also given her something she knows is accurate. I'm working. He asked for me. I also mentioned my boss. All because I'm chaining together different conversations, right? How hard is it to get that information out of people? If you're friendly, and I'm generally pretty jovial with people, it's easy to extract that information. But just knowing and creating that awareness that, hey, listen, if I was going to have someone on the computers, I would have told you personally. And knowing when it's okay to hang up the phone on that person and go, hey, listen, let me call you back. Let me talk to my manager first. Creating that level of awareness, like, for example, wire transfers. Under what circumstances is your secretary allowed to transfer money? When do we buy credit cards or gift cards? Never. Mm-hmm. Okay, is VBS coming up? Maybe we're buying a gift card. Buying one, not 50. Right? Go ahead, Mark. Sorry,
so what we would point to in each one of those situations is going to be, from what we see in our data, from what we saw in our survey, and what we even see in the Hoover app from today's, we're not consistent in our faculty staff cybersecurity training. Now, there were some yeses, so I don't want to say that across the board. There were the yeses. Yes, we consistently do it. But we're going to point out here that what we see as, based on that table of moving from a 1 to a 5, there is a great need for school faculty training programs to include cybersecurity awareness. Now, that was the previous workshop. We're happy to go back to it and work through it with whoever would like to see it. But we would also say that as a cost-conscious solution, and as James pointed out, this is probably one of the cheapest ways of doing the most benefit for your organization, for our organizations, is to make sure that our end users are as appropriately trained as we are able to. And we're not necessarily saying you got to go out to a third-party vendor and get their training in. James can talk about it. We can point out to you some very cost-conscious tools, and we hopefully will continue to do that for you and how to create this. But identifying a security leadership team and determining the school's knowledge and readiness levels besides this, we know we faculty train, we know we have the orientation times. Perhaps we're even assuming that there is some cybersecurity awareness, but maybe the school doesn't have a cybersecurity leadership team to go back to a chart like this and determine, okay, where are we? Am I at one of these levels? What is my path forward to this next level? So if you're an administrator in the room, and perhaps you are the one that the IT questions go to, because for many, I know for Matt George, he would say that he's either the second or the third most knowledgeable IT person in the school. And so he's going to get questions from everything from a student laptop to the printer to whatever else whoever might need. Maybe Josh, that's the same for you perhaps, or close to it. There you go. So maybe it's you, maybe it's an IT professional, but either way, we would suggest a cost-conscious or a shoestring solution. Get a leadership team that will determine the school's knowledge and readiness levels. That team could then conduct the sort of scamming that he's speaking of, and now maybe your mind's racing. We gotta be careful with that information, right? There's certain things we don't want to put in kids' minds. We don't want to talk about it. So maybe the same here. We shouldn't have told you about the gas station lady or the church canceling the dinner, because maybe now you're going to go home and do that kind of stuff. But we're only saying in a white hat manner. He's only referring to this in a white hat manner, in a manner of, to benefit, we're going to see the cracks. Identify that team amongst your group of leadership, whoever that is. In the accreditation processes your schools may or may not go through, what's interesting is right now, when it comes to cybersecurity, this doesn't really exist. Anybody want to tell me I'm wrong on that front? Anybody want to tell me it's gone through either the KCEA, AACS, ACSI, anybody's training, anybody, the classical one? Any of those accrediting processes have cybersecurity in them? I'm not aware that they do at this moment. Even though they have the physical security standards, I'm not aware of one that actually has the cybersecurity standards. And that's interesting. I think we're probably going to see something like that get developed over the course of however long. So maybe this is something for you to be impressing your accrediting agencies with when they come through. Oh, and by the way, not only do I have cameras everywhere, but I also make sure that our faculty and staff have gone through an annual cybersecurity training through so-and-so. So this would be a first problem, a first solution. Questions on this one? We hit a lot, but this was kind of an introductory one. Any questions on this one? Any thoughts on this one?
How many people do you recommend being on the leadership team?
Yeah, so I think multi-levels, right? Obviously, you want someone on the senior leadership level that can impact change and make the final decision. I also want a board member on there because I want to make sure that they're aware of the problem and they can be our advocate on the board side. Because, good boards enable us, bad boards detract from the efforts we're trying to make. We want to make sure someone on that board's a believer. We also want to make sure we have a couple different change levels in the organization. I like a young person who's a doer. I also like an older person who's going to help me understand and articulate why this is going to cause problems, right? Young people go, oh, it's just MFA. Yeah. An older person might go, I don't know what that is.
Multi-factor
Yeah, multi-factor authentication. So we want to make sure that we understand how is this change going to impact all of my staff, because we want to make sure you can still do your job and be secure at the same time. So have multiple levels in that slice, so you know that, hey, my decision is going to impact different generations differently.
When we were looking at this, my mind kept going to 3 or 4. He's describing perhaps 4 or 5 on that front, especially if there is a relationship that is close enough between perhaps the senior leader of the school and the pastor, if it's a church school, or if there's a board member and the senior leadership, if that buy-in is more a known, less a question, I guess I would say. I've been in both situations where it's a rubber stamp committee or it's a micromanaging entity. So I guess knowing that way would cut off one or the other.
How much? We have a team. We have an outside guy. He's not on the board, but he's like
Awesome.
a computer guy. Could be like yourself being on the board. Like having you be kind of a consultant to the team. Do you think that's wise or unwise?
I absolutely, I think it'd be wise. Yeah, and I think especially someone who specializes in it, it's nice to have even like an IT steering committee level that makes a recommendation to your board, that's comprised of like different stakeholders in the business, external stakeholders, a couple parents, but like that's a great place to mine for what's coming up next, because The cybersecurity environment's always evolving. The threat landscape is what we'd call the technical term. It's changing all the time. So how my business changes or how my school changes needs to adapt to that front as well.
And there's a lot of our schools are going to have that champion, that IT champion. Maybe they're not on faculty, maybe they're not on staff, maybe they are a faculty member, but whoever that person is that we know our minds go to is this is the guy, this is the gal in the ministry that's going to be operating. Mm-hmm. They're going to be in our previous session. They're going to be entering the 200 plus Google passwords for our student accounts year over year. That person probably should definitely be a part of this, at least in some way. I see some laughter. Is that one of you in the back? Is that maybe not? Okay. All right. Another problem, a consideration, risk drivers. Okay, so that leadership team, when they sat down to consider, what are they actually considering? Because let's say that we have, I know, forgive me because I don't know all of your schools, but I have met some of you. We have in the back, tri-state, it's going to be a small staff, not a school, but a small staff of people, not representing students necessarily or those who are going to have devices in front of them. So their assertion of access to emails, previous incidents, all these sorts of things, when that leadership team from Tri-State walks through this, it's going to be significantly different than anybody have a school over 300. Okay, so a school over 300 is going to have a far different understanding of what their risk is. That team should come away with a far different understanding of what that risk is than Tri-State is necessarily. Unless Tri-State is in some ways responsible for $2 million of government funding. Like in that case, now it's a different situation, of course. But if we're just thinking about who they are,
ultimately it's about matching up risk level with mitigation strategies. So access to email and online accounts, for example. If all of your staff have email accounts, like that's more entry points into your organization. If you guys have a history of previous incidents, okay. If I've compromised an account once, I may still have data left over from that account to propagate further account compromises. Your operational size, how big are you? Obviously, more size, more risk. Your technology footprint. Do you have servers? Do you have security cameras? Are those public facing? Everyone likes to have security cameras that I can access from home. That also means I can access them from Nigeria.
James and I took our wives to a Navy football game. Anybody ever been to the Navy football in Annapolis? All right, so it's an experience, a tradition unlike any others, they would say. It's great. But we went down to the waterfront for dinner afterwards to Federal Hill. I'll say it. It's a Federal Hill.
Delicious food.
Great food. James walked in and realized that he was cold. And we realized that the temperature,
the Nest thermostat was on the public Wi-Fi, so I just raised the temperature from my phone.
Anybody could walk in and change that.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I as well. I LOL'd. I did. It was interesting at that point. But if we look back at your school right now and think about your school, your church, and your ministry, and think about, is there anything that is being operated in that way that's just? He said open. You said frontward facing, would make me think about that.
Yeah.
What are we doing that?
Well, and it was even a little easier than that. So, when you connect what we call an IoT, Internet of Things device to your network, sometimes you have to connect to it via Bluetooth first. It's just still open. I didn't have to be on the Wi-Fi. It's just broadcasting its own signal for me to go out and capture, connect to, download the app, make up a name, and then I'm just doop, 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 doop. I feel cozier in here now, right?
Nice.
Easy to do it, and if I see a public printer on Wi-Fi, you better believe I'm printing to it. If I'm sitting in your restaurant, I'm sending 45 blank pages to that printer. And someone's going to think that thing's possessed the next day. It's just the best time. Technology and staffing expertise. Dangerous. Having good IT people is a blessing. If you don't have good IT people, your technology should reflect that, right? People that are, I'm sorry, Mark.
No, you go ahead.
People that are, great technologists who are familiar with open source frameworks and Linux, there's a ton of free tools out there, but they take technology expertise to run well. If you don't have technology expertise, don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money and get something that's easier to use, because the product that I can't use is ineffective.
And that product could also wind up costing you so much more in the long run because you took the recommendation of that IT champion, even though you don't have somebody on, I'm pointing at you, but not pointing at you, you don't have somebody on staff to implement what that champion installed and then said, okay, here you go. Well, that's going to be far less helpful than something, ultimately, that could be far more harmful and costly than something that did cost a little more up front, but that is something that even you from a desktop or your guy or whoever it is from a desktop in a much more friendly user interface is able to control, access, help your industry. So let me go ahead to our problems and our solution here. Our problem: schools are generally unaware of their level of risk. So again, if we're supposing that most of our schools are not having faculty staff training, and by our survey from before, the surveys we've just used here for KCEA, then I am absolutely going to bet that that schools are also unaware of their level of risk. Okay, so our solution: complete phishing simulation testing to determine baseline risk and demonstrate to staff for risk levels. We got to hurry because we only have the 10 minutes left that we have. But on our previous session, James walked through, and we can walk through again. Don't raise your hands, but if we ask how many of you have had the phishing emails come through your school, and Josh, you even mentioned you can recognize the crazy email it came from. There are tools available to you, and we can talk about them in a bit. There's tools available to you if you'd like to hear more about them that they're created so you can get online, make up an email that looks quote unquote legit, and then send that email to your people and see who responds to it. So it is what's your wording for it? It is a safe failing. It's
failing in the safe environment, not failing with a threat actor on the other end of that email, right? And then obviously traceable, so we know who the bad people are, but we know some people may need more reinforcement. Mm-hmm. Some people need more training. That's okay.
Yeah, and that would be part of that team's. If we're thinking of having this team, maybe this is a first step for that team. Okay, now, in order to assess the level of risk the school is at, they're going to surreptitiously send out this email campaign to our people, and as he said, find out where those weaker, more transparent layers of the onion of the security, which is a security. Let's keep going here. So third, personnel access to sensitive information, personnel or personal information. We would posit here that there's going to be read access, write access, and execute access. Let me ask you, you have a K-5 teacher. Can I call on you, Michelle? Is that okay? Is it Michelle? Is it Michelle? No, I'm sorry. Do you have a K-5 teacher at your school? Are you the K-5 teacher at the school? Okay, good. We can pick on somebody else. Good. Okay, here we go. So we call on you. What level of access should your K-5 teacher have to 5th grade homeroom information?
0.
Good job. Yeah, exactly. We would say theoretically it's 0, unless that K-5 teacher also teaches them gym or something. What level of access should the K-5 teacher have to, we'll say, her homeroom K-5 students? What information should she have available to her about those students, would you suppose? Or, yeah, I won't ask you what you do, but what would you suppose to be appropriate?
Students' names of the day, parents' names, parents' phone number. Okay.
Perhaps an email gets thrown in there. Yeah, what a preferred mode of communication. Does your K-5 teacher need to know a complete health assessment of that student?
No.
What would be appropriate for that K-5 teacher to know? Something like that. So we're identifying automatically there's greater stores of information that somebody in the school is going to have access to, or the camp is going to have access to through the registration, not to forget our campers. Anybody else in here I'm missing, like a college or somebody else? Yes. But the camp has access to more health records than what the counselors or somebody else can have access to. We're going to agree with you that if we're going to have these pieces of information, there's going to be the need for the people who have this information to have, I can't even read that, that's horrible, I'm sorry. Where is that wording?
So essentially, the problem promoting the principle of least privilege domain.
Least privilege, there we go.
Yeah, and the goal there is that doing some kind of periodic review where you actively see what does a teacher have access to. And you'll find that we'd call it privilege creep or scope creep, right? If you're doing like formal project management, where maybe she needed shared something one time and we never pulled it back. So she's got access to not only see, but she can also delete all that information about her class. Maybe a K-5 teacher doesn't need the ability to delete class information. She only needs the ability to edit something that's there, but not delete the entire class entirely. Mm-hmm. So when, and that's an important word, when her account is compromised, how bad's it going to be? Not if, when.
And we also think about think about your staff, faculty staff right now, how many of them have changed a position in the course of the last 2 or 3 years? Did all of their permissions change with them, or did they retain those permissions? So they went from the office to the classroom, or vice versa, classroom to the office, or they switched classrooms. Are we sure on the back end of whatever LMS you're using that their permissions now reflect appropriately their job description? And that's what this solution would be. Again, that cybersecurity leadership team that you pulled together, making sure that they have read job descriptions and they have presented the technical demands of, or the content demands of that job description. And that cybersecurity leadership team has said, these faculty members, a homeroom faculty member, should have X, Y, Z permissions concerning student information and no more. And then everybody who's a homeroom teacher gets those, everybody who fits that job description receives that information and no more, or that read, write, or access, or execute information and no more.
Or take into consideration that if I've had a teacher leave my school, mm-hmm. if I'm using Google, where my licensing is low cost or free, there's not really an urgent demand to pull that license back, right? So I might have someone who's no longer working here, not updating their password, don't have MFA on their phone. I'm not monitoring that account really. The account could be compromised. They could also still be accessing financial data. Now, we assume the best, but we prepare for the worst, mm-hmm. right? But there's no way to really prepare for that scenario if I'm not actively seeing who my active staff count is. And by the way, if they still have access to that, what else do they have access to? The LMS? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All kinds of things that could still be out there.
Which again, we understand that maybe that's you. Maybe you're sitting here and that's you, the administrator, and you're writing down, shoot, Cindy left last year. I never shut off hers.
And the purpose of the leadership team as well is you hear these tasks, and if you're an administrator, you think, oh, great, one more thing for me to do, right? The leadership team helps me decentralize some of that leadership. It helps me make sure that, okay, so-and-so is responsible for setting up new users in the LMS. So-and-so is responsible for removing access over the summer because they don't need access any longer, right? Whatever that process looks like, whatever fits your school, not all of it needs to be owned by the administrator. And we actually got a chuckle in the last presentation when we talked about giving teachers the ability to reset passwords for student accounts. We even got a chuckle, which tells me that administrator's probably busy all the time because they're unwilling to decentralize some of that leadership to other members of their team.
And she's having to be pulled out of class for different things.
Yeah.
We also make a note here in this solution, not only is this team defining just job descriptions,
using things like role-based access controls.
I'm sorry, actually this is the next one, my fault. Let's get to the last one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Respect your time, the 2 minutes. Okay, so attack vectors. This is kind of similar to number 2, but what we're gonna say is an attack vector, go ahead and walk through this.
Yeah, so we think about attack vectors. We talked about the different type of technology you use and how it can influence risk. If I have email connected users, I have a risk factor. If I have mobile enabled users, I have to think about what data is being exchanged with other apps. Do I have young people who are jailbreaking phones?
Are you letting students bring their devices onto your campus to keep your costs down?
Yep. Yeah, BYOD, bring your own device policies and things like that. Do I have public-facing technology and remote access services? If I have TeamViewer installed on a computer so that I can help someone from home, if that account's compromised or if I'm sharing that account, someone else can help your users from home.
Or your Nest thermostat. Yeah.
Yep, Nest thermostat, security cameras are all obvious things. High visibility user profiles. If your pastor's on the website, he's a target. Mm-hmm. Or she's a target.
No.
Sorry, wrong crowd. Cloud-based systems.
But back to the pastor email one,
confident. I don't know.
Back to the pastor email one, we have you'll see more and more of the modern websites are not allowing for that name to be attached to an email, or you have to enter some kind of approve you're human or something like that, kind of CAPTCHA stuff to make sure. So if you are in control of those websites, maybe that's a quick just note to disassociate names, pull all your faculty staff email off of there.
And the last one on here, cloud-based systems. I'm a big fan of Google Drive, makes storage very easy, very accessible. With that accessibility means that now I don't have to be in your building to access it, right? Which means that I can hit that server, that cloud environment from China, from Mongolia, from anywhere I want to hit that cloud server. And we'll talk, and we have a paper coming out, which Mark will talk about, but the ability to restrict where I can access those services. You probably don't need to access that from China. If you do, we'll put a policy in place for you for 24 hours. But making sure that you've restricted things appropriately. So problem and solution, incomplete or outdated understanding of the organization's attack surface. What applications are people using? You should have a basic inventory of what SaaS applications, software as a service, are being used, which ones are installed on workstations. And then the solution here, the cybersecurity leadership team should perform a qualitative risk assessment with the aid of the NIST cybersecurity framework. You see the National Institute of Standards and Technology cybersecurity framework is a really good example of a inexpensive and free tool that you can walk through from a detection, protection, identification, response, and recover framework. You can work through that with your IT person or with a volunteer, and they'll help you kind of qualitatively assess your risk. And then you decide, hey, do we want to have this risk? Do we want to mitigate it, transfer it, accept it? All valid strategies, but they're based on your organization, based on your school.
And ultimately, from that assessment, this is the call for action. Come up with a list of relevant risks to consider for a budgeted allocation overcoming, so to speak. And even if you're not going to use the NIST technology, just get that team together and say, okay, this is our attack footprint. This is where we're most vulnerable. What can we do this year in one way to minimize that? Next year, what's one more thing we can do to minimize that? One more thing to minimize. The next year, you blow up by 400 students. Okay, now we got to reestablish that. So we have already overcome our time, and I apologize for that. There's the review. He mentioned that we have, James and I have used that survey information to come up with a string of 3 articles that will be published in the American Association of Christian Schools Journal for Christian Education. And those articles will be, I think the first one's coming out in October, and the other, if you happen to be a part of that organization, you would get those, and you can see us there. And this information, and more information, and even why you should use Google. Articles coming out later on in the future. So thanks for being with us. It's 3:50, so feel free to step away. But we also would love to stay and answer any questions we can at all answer for you, because we want to be here for you if we can be. So if you have anything or any questions from this or something else we didn't talk about, please let us know. But otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for offering your brain.
Absolutely.
Well, he offered it. I just didn't fight it.
Absolutely. So, I need to meet this
I'm curious, so you were at
Yeah, there you
Faith
go.
as the administrator. Do you know Josiah Santini?
I do, yeah.